This video is about a board game that I wanted to talk about called Monopoly. This is one of the newer versions. This one actually has the cat in it. And I have a couple of copies of Monopoly. They are newer. I don't have any of the old ones. But it's a very interesting game. Uh, and it's paradoxical because on the one hand, I Googled this and asked for an estimate of how many copies of Monopoly. And it came back with, well, it's estimated 300 million copies of Monopoly have sold. And I strongly suspect that it's more than that. It's just an estimate, but this is an old game, and when I was a kid, every home had a copy of Monopoly in a closet somewhere. It was, it was that popular of a game. And I liked the idea of Monopoly quite a bit when I was a kid. However, in practice, it was a little bit of a letdown. And I want to talk about that because despite being one of the best-selling board games of all time, and it is also one of the most disliked. And I've thought about this a long time, and I found there are three main reasons why people dislike Monopoly. And one is far ahead of all the other ones, I think. It takes too long. Okay, I understand that, but there is a reason why Monopoly takes too long, and that reason could be mitigated. That can be fixed. So that could solve the problem for a lot of people. Second reason people don't like Monopoly is they can't win. And I'm not talking about playing against tournament players. I'm just talking the regular family group. There's some people just can't seem to win in the competition in Monopoly against their family members and friends in their group. And the third one I think is a lot harder to address, but some people don't like the fact that it's cutthroat. The objective is to bankrupt everybody, and it seems mean, but I'll argue, sorry's kind of mean when you land on somebody and send them back to start. So, family games are kind of like that. You're trying to eliminate the other players. So I don't know what can be done about that. I think some people just don't have a taste for that. So yeah, it's not for them. But the other two things can be dealt with. And I do want to talk about this. I used Monopoly quite a bit with my grandkids. I have 4 grandkids that for 4 or 5, 6 years spent a lot of time at my house. And actually participated some in homeschooling, particularly around social studies and history. But I used games a lot because I found games will engage a child, a young person, into a topic that would be boring for them if it wasn't part of a game. And so I designed a number of games for this purpose too. But Monopoly, I definitely used it, and there are some reasons to use Monopoly as a game to get, young people to learn things that would be boring for them maybe by rote. So I want to talk about how I use this game with my grandkids. Number one, they learn how to make change. If you've ever been at a cash register and the person typed the thing in wrong and it doesn't do the change for them, they're stuck. A lot of people are stuck. And so somebody gets to be the banker. I always let one of the kids be the banker, and you help them. But they learn how to count change out because you got ones, fives, tens, 20s, 50s, hundreds, and 500s. And sure, that's not exactly the same currency that we're accustomed to using all the time. But the concept of making change is very clear, and it's not like they're making change the whole time, but every time they have to make change, it's an opportunity to learn while playing a game that's fun. So I like that aspect of it. Number 2, there's other opportunities for math training in Monopoly. When you have a mortgaged property and you unmortgage it, you have to pay 10% of the mortgage value as interest. So you've got to multiply a 10% charge onto your unmortgaged value. So 10% is an easy one to learn to do, but for kids and middle schoolers, it's a great opportunity for them to learn how to get the 10% and add it on to be able to make that unmortgage happen. Again, it's not the whole game, but it comes up often in the game and they have to learn to do it, and it's a good thing. Number three, another math, they can be introduced to the concept of the bell curve. Because as you know, the game is driven by two six-sided dice that you add together. So you can get a 2 to a 12 as a result. However, we know that not all results are the same, are they? A 7 is much more likely to come up than a 2 or a 12. And that's because of that phenomenon of the bell curve. And depending on the age of the kids, they can just get a concept of it, or they could actually take the time to go through all the details to understand how the bell curve works. But they'll be using a bell curve all the time playing this game. A fourth thing that I think Monopoly teaches kids is negotiation. Because in life, we have to learn that it isn't all about us, and we can't just have everything we want. We have to come up with mutually accepted compromises. And in Monopoly, you know, very rarely is a person going to land on a complete set of properties. The only way you can get a set of properties that you can build on is by making trades. And of course, the properties have different values and different values to different players depending on what else they have. So very rarely is an even for even property trade going to work. So you might have to throw in, with the property you want to trade for, you might have to give them a railroad also, or throw some cash in. And you have to learn how to make it so both sides feel like they're getting a fair deal. And that is a great skill to develop. Also, when you can't make a deal with somebody, it can be frustrating. So you can learn to lose graciously and win graciously. Same thing as if you get bankrupted, you can learn to lose the game graciously. And kids need to learn that. Because kids like to win, and they have to learn how you don't win always in life. And when you do win, it's not a time to grandstand and to, make other people feel, lesser. So they can learn how to win graciously. So I use Monopoly for all of those things in the past, and I've played a number of games with my grandkids. Okay, so I'm going to address the number one reason people hate Monopoly, in my opinion, and it's because the game's too long. And I agree, the game's too long. And but one of the reasons why it's too long is because of house rules. And if you don't know what a house rule is, it's when you add a rule by mutual agreement to the game that isn't in the rules. Okay? And I have found that there is one house rule that seems ubiquitous to all Monopoly players, and it ruins the game, and people don't realize that there's an unintended consequence of this rule, and that is it makes the game last too long or forever. And that house rule is putting money in free parking. By the original design, free parking is supposed to be a free space that the only advantage is you've moved out ahead on the board without hurting yourself, and you're one step closer to go. And the penalty is, well, you don't get to buy anything. And that's it. So some people have come up with the idea, and it's a very popular one because it is fun. Excuse me. It is fun. It adds to that gambling aspect. Anybody has an equal chance of winning the pot, right? Of free parking. And so what we do is we take maybe $500 out of the bank. And I'm going to call it fiat currency, right? Or $1,000, or people have different ways of adding money to that pot. But the problem is, even though it's fun having the chance to win that money, the objective of the game is to bankrupt the other players and be the last man standing. So when you give a player that is ready to lose the game and then be out of the game because they can't pay their bills, if you give them a new chance to stay in the game by landing on free parking and getting that $200 or $500 or $1,000, now they're in the game longer, and they may actually rebound enough to actually move ahead of some of the other players. And so this will happen over and over in the game. Yeah, once in a while the richest player will win the pot too, but the other times the poor players win the pot and stay in the game, and it makes the game last a long time. Because you're adding free money into the game when the objective of the game is to take money away from people. And it's so bad that I won't play Monopoly with anyone that's house ruling free parking. Can't do it because it ruins the game. The game will last too long. You'll have to quit. So just take that for what it's worth. Try it. So there are other things that also damage the game that people do, and one of them is that they don't take advantage of some of the rules in the game that are allowed. They just don't, it doesn't occur to them, or they don't learn how to use those rules. And when used, two things happen. It shortens the game, and if you're a guy that can never win, you can win if you learn how to use the rules. So I'm going to talk about one rule that I see missed all the time, and that is buying houses. Now, you need a set of properties to buy a house. However, most people play the game that's your turn, you roll the dice, move your piece, buy property, buy houses, or do whatever, and now it's the next guy's turn, and then you wait. But the rules don't say that you can only buy houses on your turn. And that's important. What you can do is when it's another person's turn, they're getting ready to roll the dice, you can say, hold up, I want to buy some houses, before they roll and buy houses. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, one of the mistakes people make that sometimes loses them the game is they spend all their money buying houses and no one's anywhere near landing on those spaces. So they're tying up all their money in houses, and they might land on somebody else and then have to pay and not have the money. Now they got to take houses off, and you get half price when you take them off. So you don't want to do that. So the game does allow for you to be an opportunist in the real estate market. So, for example, if I've got my turn and nobody's near any of my properties, I'm going to hold on to my money so that I have more flexibility in the game, right? That's going to help me win. Now, if somebody's turn's coming up and they're on a space, and if they get a 2, they're going to hit my property. And if they get a 3, they're going to hit my property. Well, I could say, stop, I want to build some houses. But realizing the bell curve, a 2 or a 3, there's an 8% chance that they're going to roll a 2 or a 3 and land on my property. So I'm going to be tying my money all up for an 8% chance. Not going to do it. However, that same player might hit my property on a 5, 7, or 8. Well, that's a 41% chance. So hold on, I want to buy some houses. And you buy houses, and then hopefully they roll a 5, 7, or 8, and then you're closer to winning the game and you're closer to bankrupting them, right? The game's going to go quicker if you can use these opportunities to make money off other players. Here's something else that people do not realize, and that is the number of houses in the game is a fixed limit. So if you've got 4 players, there are only so many houses that can be bought. And of course, you want to be buying them. So yes, you want to buy up houses as much as you can to clog up the market so other people can't buy houses. Because when other people buy houses, you end up paying more money if you land on their properties, right? So you want to buy houses. But a mistake that people make is that you don't have to keep building your properties up. So there is an optimal number of houses per investment, per return. And it isn't necessarily building all the way up to hotels. Hotels are very expensive. They do get you more money when people land on it, but 3 houses gets you enough money. And building that hotel means you put 4 houses back in the pool, and other players can buy those houses and get you. So another strategy that you can use in Monopoly is, build 3 or 4 houses on your property, but don't go to the hotels. Use up the limit on the houses. Okay? Here's another rule that people do not use, and it's auctions. Now, when you land on a property, you don't have to buy it. If you don't want to buy it, you can say, I don't want to buy it. It goes up for auction. Now, just because you didn't want to buy it at face value and it goes up for auction, that doesn't mean you can't bid on it. And you don't have to, buy it if you have the money. You can put it up to auction anyway. And of course, early in the game, you don't want to do that. Because sometimes people will pay more than the face value of the property early in the game because you need to collect properties to give you, negotiation space and opportunities. However, later in the game, when people have less money, you can have an auction and there may not be a whole lot of competition, especially if you want that property, but other people really don't want it and they can't really afford it. And so, yeah, they might bid low, but you have a good chance of getting that property under face value if you use the auction mechanism. And I know I've bought properties that other people put up for auction, didn't have enough money to buy, and I was able to buy it for less than the mortgage value. I didn't really want the property, but I bought the property, got it, mortgaged it immediately, and came out with an extra $50. So you can use the auction mechanism anytime you want, and that can help you, to win the game. Here's a third thing that people don't recognize, and it's the jail situation. You go to jail, right, in Monopoly, and jails generally in real life is not good. You don't want to be in jail. You want to get out as soon as possible. And in Monopoly, sometimes you do. Early in the game, when there's a lot of properties that could be bought, every turn that you're in jail, other people are buying properties and you're not. So you want to get out of jail, even if it costs you $50. Or you have to use that card. But later in the game, you want to stay in jail if you can, because the other people can be bouncing around the board, landing on your properties, and you can be collecting money, but they won't be collecting anything on you if you're in jail. So later in the game, you want to stay in jail 3 turns if you can, if you end up there. So those are just a few things that will mitigate. Yeah, the game doesn't have to take an eternity to play. If you play by the rules, you don't house rule it, and you use all of the rules in the game as opportunities. Number 2, you don't have to lose the game. You can actually win if you understand a little bit more about how to use all of the rules that are allowed in the game. Now I want to talk about how I played this game with my grandkids. I did not let them win. I played competitively. I mean, I didn't play like I was in a tournament, because I'm not a tournament level player. I'm an average player. But I played against them. And what I typically would do is I was better than them because, I was in my 50s and they were, pre-teens. So I would play until we bankrupted one of the kids. And once they went bankrupt, then I would leave the game and let the bankrupt kid take over my game. And that gave, sometimes the kid that went bankrupt is the worst player. So it gave them a little bit of advantage going ahead in the game, playing my game out. But that's how I did it. And I let them watch me play competitively so they could see, how I went about doing it. And anyway, that's how I did it with the kids. And they tended to like playing Monopoly. And I did it with all 4 grandkids. And Monopoly is not a bad game, but you do have to recognize there's a right way to play it and a wrong way to play it. So anyway, that's all I have to say about it. I don't play Monopoly anymore because I don't have any grandkids around to play with. But anyway, have a great day and thanks for watching.
Trucking